Imagine being like one of the most famous women in Hollywood history.
Oh yeah, the absolute pinnacle of fame.
Right. A woman whose breathtaking beauty, her ruthless ambition, and, her highly publicized scandals just captivated the entire world for decades.
You're talking about someone who built an absolute empire.
Exactly. An empire built on a foundation of dazzling glamour. But now I want you to imagine deciding at the very end of your life to just burn that carefully constructed image entirely to the ground.
To completely dismantle it.
Yeah, to strip away the magazine covers, the studio PR machinery, the whole mythology, and reveal the raw, unvarnished truth. Not the glittering version that the public bought, but the real story.
It is honestly the ultimate subversion of the Hollywood myth. And, well, that is exactly what we are unpacking today.
We really are.
We're taking a deep dive into this really fascinating stack of literary critiques, sociological analyses, and historical deep dives that are all centered around Taylor Jenkins Reid's best-selling novel, The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo.
Such a massive cultural touchstone.
It is. But we are looking way beyond the glitz and the red carpets today. Our mission is to uncover what this story reveals about the true, often devastating cost of ambition.
Yeah.
We'll look at the meticulous, almost surgical construction of identity and, the terrifying lengths people will go to in order to protect the ones they love.
And a quick heads up for you before we really get into the weeds here.
Right, this is important.
Yeah, the academic papers and the narrative we're looking at today dive into some heavy, polarizing topics. We're talking about LGBTQ plus identity and historical oppression, abortion and the right to die, or euthanasia.
Some really complex themes.
Exactly. So just to be completely clear, we aren't here to take a political stance on any of this or to endorse any specific viewpoint.
No, not at all.
Our job today is strictly to hold up a magnifying glass to what the author and these scholars are actually saying and to impartially analyze the ideas exactly as they exist in the source material. We're just here to explore the text.
Precisely.
Yeah.
We just want to understand the mechanics of the narrative and the sociological frameworks being applied to it, to see how a fictional story can act as a mirror for very real historical and societal structures.
Okay, so let's unpack this. The entire premise of this deep dive starts with what writers call the inciting incident, and it comes in the form of a very, very mysterious invitation.
Right out of nowhere.
Yeah. We have Monique Grant. She is a 35-year-old biracial journalist working at Vivant magazine in New York City. And frankly, her life is completely stalling out.
She's really in a rut.
She is. Her career is stagnating. She's writing fluff pieces when she desperately wants to do real journalism. And to top it all off, her husband, David, has just left her.
Ouch.
Yeah, she is basically waking up every day feeling invisible.
And then, the impossible
Or
happens.
your ultimate wild card.
Exactly. Evelyn Hugo, who is now 79 years old, highly reclusive, living in this absolute fortress of a luxurious Upper East Side apartment, reaches out to Vivant.
Which is huge for the magazine.
Massive. She agrees to a highly coveted, exclusive interview, but with one absolute non-negotiable condition. Monique Grant must be the one to do it.
Just Monique.
Just Monique. No senior editors, no veteran profile writers.
Which makes zero sense to Monique or to her incredibly intimidating boss, Frankie. I mean, Monique is basically a nobody in that specific echelon of the journalism world.
She really is.
But it gets even crazier because once Monique actually gets into the apartment and sits down in Evelyn's sunlit study, Evelyn drops the real bombshell.
She doesn't want to do a magazine profile at all.
Not even a little bit. She wants Monique to write her authorized posthumous biography. Evelyn promises to tell her the absolute truth about her life, her 7 marriages, the scandals, everything.
Unfiltered.
Totally unfiltered. And the kicker, Monique gets to keep all the profits from the book. Millions of dollars.
It's wild. But if we look at the power dynamics here, it is absolutely central to understanding Evelyn's character right from page 1.
Okay.
Well, Evelyn is in complete control. Think about it. This is a woman who has spent her entire life having her image managed, dissected, and consumed by the public.
And by powerful men in the mid-century studio system.
Exactly. Now, at the end of her life, she is setting the exact, uncompromising terms of her own unmasking. I was reading this fascinating literary critique that framed this entire setup as a classic feature of a postmodern mock autobiography.
Wait, a postmodern mock autobiography?
Yeah.
So if the author is purposefully blurring reality by making this a mock autobiography, doesn't that make us as readers kind of complicit in the exact same celebrity worship the book is criticizing?
Oh, that is exactly the brilliant trap of the novel.
Well, okay.
In postmodern literature, there is a deliberate structural blurring of the lines between fiction and reality. The text uses a fictional character who bears striking, undeniable similarities to real historical figures to make us question how we consume media.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, the scholars explicitly draw parallels between Evelyn Hugo and real-life Hollywood icons.
Yeah.
You look at Elizabeth Taylor, who famously had 7 marriages and was the ultimate silver screen legend,
Right. The parallel is right there in the title.
or Rita Hayworth, who was actually born Margarita Carmen Cancino.
Oh, right. Rita Hayworth's story is so central to understanding Evelyn.
It really is.
She was of Spanish and Irish descent, but the studio system essentially forced her to undergo this brutal physical transformation.
It was
I
horrifying.
made her undergo a year of painful electrolysis to change her hairline to look less Latina, and they bleached her skin and dyed her hair red. Her heritage was essentially erased by Hollywood.
Exactly. And that brings up a concept I saw heavily discussed in the sociological papers we reviewed, Baudrillard's concept of hyperreality.
Hyperreality. Okay, break that down for me.
Sure. Specifically applied to celebrity culture, hyperreality is what happens when the fabricated image, the simulacrum, becomes more real to the public than the actual human being.
But that makes total sense.
The academic papers refer to this as the celebritized identity. The public in the novel didn't fall in love with a human woman named Evelyn Elena Herrera.
They fell in love with Evelyn Hugo.
Exactly. A carefully manufactured persona, a product designed in a boardroom to sell movie tickets.
But here's where my skepticism kicks in as a reader.
Let's hear it.
It's like being handed the winning lottery ticket by a complete stranger, but the stranger refuses to tell you why they chose you.
Right.
Monique is sitting there, being handed tens of millions of dollars and a career-making opportunity by a woman who opens the conversation by essentially admitting, hey, my entire public existence has been a meticulously crafted lie.
She owns it immediately.
Yeah. So what does this all mean for us as the audience? Do we inherently trust a narrator who tells us straight up she's a professional liar?
That is the core vibrating tension of the entire narrative.
It has to be.
The critical analysis points out that this forces the reader, alongside Monique, into a position of constant active evaluation. Can't just passively consume Evelyn's story.
You have to play detective.
Right. And ironically, Evelyn becomes a reliable narrator, precisely because she is finally admitting to her unreliability.
That's a great point.
She is peeling back the layers of the hyperreal to expose the messy, flawed human underneath. But to truly understand the mechanics of why Evelyn built this massive, impenetrable web of lies in the first place, the research suggests we have to look closely at what she was running away from.
Right. We have to go back to the beginning. Before the emerald green gowns, before the Oscars, before the 7 husbands.
We have to go to Hell's Kitchen.
Yes. Hell's Kitchen, New York City in 1938.
Evelyn is born Evelyn Elena Herrera to impoverished Cuban immigrants. And we have to understand the historical context of Hell's Kitchen in that era.
It wasn't the trendy neighborhood we know today.
Not at all. It was an area defined by extreme poverty, tenement housing, and desperation. After her mother dies, Evelyn is left entirely in the care of her father.
And the text is incredibly stark about this.
It is. Her father is deeply abusive. As Evelyn begins to physically mature into a young woman, his behavior toward her becomes predatory.
The environment is just incredibly hostile. She is trapped in an apartment with a predator.
Nowhere to run.
And Evelyn realizes very early on, with this chilling, pragmatic clarity, that in a world dominated by wealthy, powerful men, her beauty and her developing sexuality are a form of currency.
Yes, currency. That's the perfect word.
In fact, it's really the only currency she has access to. So at just 15 years old, she makes a ruthlessly calculated choice.
A survival choice.
Exactly. She seduces a local electrician named Ernie Diaz, who happens to be heading to Hollywood for work. She marries him for the sole explicit purpose of getting a ride to Los Angeles.
She uses him as a literal ticket out of Hell's Kitchen.
Yeah, she trades her body for geographical escape.
And this act, trading her physical body and her autonomy for survival and mobility, is the first major subversion of the American dream we see in the text.
How do the academic analyses treat that?
Well, several of the papers we looked at deconstruct this deeply ingrained myth of the self-made individual.
The whole bootstraps thing.
Exactly. The traditional Horatio Alger myth, the one we are all fed, suggests that anyone can achieve upward mobility through pure, honest, hard work, intrinsic moral value, and pulling yourself up by your bootstraps.
But Evelyn's rise completely shatters that illusion.
Completely.
One of the literary scholars made a brilliant point about this. They noted that she isn't just a self-made man, she is a self-made woman.
And that distinction changes the entire mechanism of her ascent.
Because the rules are different for women.
Fundamentally different. The historical reality of the 1950s studio system was that women were commodities. The scholars argue that for Evelyn to achieve this ultimate upward mobility, she couldn't just work hard. She had to undergo profound, almost violent self-erasure.
Right, going back to the Rita Hayworth parallel.
Yes. To fit the rigid, white, heteronormative standards of 1950s Hollywood, she has to destroy her origins. She dyes her dark hair blonde. She completely drops her Cuban surname, Herrera, and is rechristened Evelyn Hugo.
She hides her ethnicity, she hides her true sexual orientation, and she adopts a persona that the studio executives deem sellable to the masses.
The academic consensus here is that the novel is a sharp critique of the American way of life. It shows that for marginalized individuals, the entry fee for the American dream often requires the absolute destruction of the authentic self.
See, here's where it gets really interesting to me. It's like a corporate rebranding, but executed on a deeply psychological, cellular level.
Corporate rebranding of the soul.
Yeah, she is code-switching her entire existence just to survive. She sheds her past like old skin. But it raises a massive, uncomfortable question for you, listening.
What's that?
Does the text suggest that the American dream itself is inherently flawed or even corrupt if it forces you to completely destroy your true identity just to participate in it?
The sociological critiques strongly suggest exactly that. Evelyn achieves unprecedented, almost unimaginable material success.
She gets it all.
The sprawling mansions, the millions of dollars, the global fame, the magazine covers, she ticks every single box of the self-made myth.
But at what cost?
Right. The analysis points out that she ultimately describes her life to Monique as one of profound grief and disenchantment. Her path to success required a behaviorist shift away from traditional moral values and toward deceit, manipulation, and commodification.
She learned very early on that in a patriarchal society, her body was a product.
And when she realizes she is a product, she makes a very empowering yet cynical decision.
She figures she might as well be the CEO controlling the transaction.
Exactly.
Which leads us directly into how she handles the defining feature of her public persona, her 7 marriages. Because she doesn't treat marriage as a romantic fairy tale.
Not at all.
She treats it like a series of corporate mergers. We really need to look at this as the weaponization of marriage.
That is a perfect framework. The research leans heavily on liberal feminist theory to unpack this specific dynamic.
Tell me more about that.
Well, if we look at scholars like Betty Friedan, who wrote The Feminine Mystique in 1963, we see an exploration of how women in mid-century America were forcefully relegated to the domestic sphere.
The expectation was domestic submission.
Right. Marriage was supposed to be the ultimate final goal of a woman's life. But Evelyn takes that patriarchal institution of marriage and completely subverts it. She turns it inside out.
She uses the very institution designed to contain her as a ladder to climb over the men trying to control her.
It's brilliant. Let's actually look at how she uses these husbands, because each one serves a very specific strategic purpose in her career trajectory.
Okay, let's look at husband number 2, Don Adler.
Hollywood royalty.
The absolute golden boy of the studio system. Now, what's tragic here is that this is actually a marriage initially built on genuine love and attraction. Evelyn thinks she has found her equal.
But goes dark very fast.
It does. Very quickly, Don becomes violently physically abusive. And when Evelyn finally finds the courage to leave him, we see the true, terrifying mechanics of Hollywood power.
Don doesn't just get mad.
No, he uses his entrenched patriarchal power and his studio connections to have Evelyn completely blacklisted. Her career is destroyed overnight. No one will hire her.
Which teaches Evelyn a brutal, unforgettable lesson about power and narrative control. When she loses control of the public narrative, she loses her livelihood.
Because the studio system in that era was essentially an oligopoly.
Right. If the men at the top decided you were done, you were done. So Evelyn realizes she has to adapt and play the PR game better than anyone else.
Which brings us to husband number 3.
Take her third husband, Mick Riva, the incredibly charismatic Frank Sinatra-esque singer.
Oh, this one is a wild ride.
It is. Evelyn finds herself in a situation where she desperately needs a massive public distraction to hide a secret relationship that would completely ruin her if it got out.
So what does she do?
She orchestrates a highly publicized, wildly impulsive Vegas elopement with Mick. It is pure theater. The marriage lasts less than a day before she has it annulled.
But we can't ignore the physical toll of that calculated move. It's not just a game played in the gossip columns.
No, there are real consequences.
The text details that this brief, calculated encounter with Mick results in an unwanted pregnancy, which leads Evelyn to have an abortion.
A huge, dangerous decision in that era.
Keep in mind, this is long before Roe v. Wade. It's a stark, visceral reminder that while she is playing this high-stakes game of public relations and manipulating the press, it is her actual physical body that is absorbing the trauma and paying the price.
Exactly. The simulacrum is weightless, but the physical body bears the scars.
Man, that's a heavy way to look at it, but so true.
And this brings us to Rex North, husband number 4, which the sociological papers highlight as the absolute prime example of her liberal feminist approach.
This was the Anna Karenina movie, right?
Yes. Evelyn and Rex are co-stars in this epic film adaptation. They realize that a romance between them would skyrocket the film's publicity.
So they basically form an LLC.
Basically, they enter into a purely strategic, mutually beneficial business arrangement. They literally sit down and negotiate a marriage contract.
They marry to boost the box office numbers.
They agree on timelines, public appearances, how to handle the press, and keep it strictly professional. It is a brilliant subversion of the marital expectation.
It's incredible. It's so cynical, but so undeniably smart.
And when Rex genuinely falls in love with another woman and wants out of the arrangement, what do?
They don't just quietly file for divorce.
No, they realize they have one last opportunity to milk the PR machine. They stage an elaborate, completely fake mutual cheating scandal to maximize press coverage, keep their names in the headlines, and boost box office returns one last time before parting as friends.
It is the ultimate commodification of her own life. She is directing her own life like it's a film.
And then contrast that with Max Sherrard, a French New Wave director, who becomes husband number 6.
He's an interesting case.
He represents another insidious danger of the hyperreal. Max claims to love Evelyn desperately. But the tragedy is, he doesn't love the real woman.
He doesn't love Evelyn from Hell's Kitchen.
Right. He loves the image of Evelyn Hugo. He loves the icon he sees projected on the 70-foot silver screen. He is in love with the simulacrum.
So if we use a chess analogy here,
Let's do it.
Evelyn is playing a massive, multi-decade game of chess against the Hollywood studio system, the press, and the public. She is using her marriages, her husbands, as pawns on the board.
Totally.
She is completely willing to sacrifice her own pieces, her reputation, her dignity, her physical safety, to protect her king. She will do anything to keep the king safe.
But if the husbands are just the pawns, who is the king?
Yeah, who is she actually protecting with all this heavy armor?
What's fascinating here, and what the literary analysis focuses heavily on, is that the king isn't her career. The king isn't her bank account. The king is the hidden truth of her life. The true loves she was desperately, fiercely shielding from the public eye. And this is where the emotional and thematic core of the novel really lies.
The big reveal.
The great romantic love of Evelyn Hugo's life, the person she built this entire fortress to protect, was not any of her 7 husbands. It was a woman.
Her fellow actress, Celia St. James.
Yes.
Yeah.
Evelyn and Celia's relationship spans decades. It is passionate, it is wildly turbulent, it is deeply flawed, and it is entirely secret.
And it has to be secret because the mid-20th century Hollywood they are navigating is violently, dangerously homophobic.
The stakes couldn't be higher.
If they were outed, it wouldn't just be a scandal. Their careers would be instantly over, their contracts voided under morality clauses, and their lives would be fundamentally destroyed.
This is where the sociological analysis really deepens, and we have to look at the historical reality they were living in.
What do the sources say?
The sources apply the mid-century sociologist C. Wright Mill's concept of the sociological imagination.
The sociological imagination.
Yeah. This is the crucial framework that suggests personal, private struggles are always deeply intertwined with broader structural societal issues.
Okay, so their relationship issues aren't just about them.
Exactly. Evelyn and Celia's heartbreak, the constant breakups, the intense jealousy over fake marriages, the psychological toll of forced hiding, these aren't just private relationship problems. They are not just 2 women failing to communicate.
They are the direct, inevitable symptoms of an oppressive society.
A patriarchal and strictly heteronormative society that legally and socially refuses to let them exist authentically.
Let's actually talk about the mechanics of that oppression, because it's vital context for you to understand just how trapped they were.
Please.
In the 1950s, you had the Hays Code, which strictly dictated what could be shown on screen, specifically banning any inference of quote-unquote sex perversion, which was their term for homosexuality.
Right.
You had the Lavender Scare, where the government was actively purging gay employees. You had gossip rags like Confidential magazine that made their money outing and destroying queer actors.
The threat wasn't abstract.
It was a loaded gun pointed at their heads every single day.
Exactly. It was a regime of terror for queer individuals. And to navigate this, to facilitate this hiding, Evelyn relies on her greatest platonic love, her fifth husband, Harry Cameron.
Oh, Harry.
Harry is a brilliant producer who discovered Evelyn early on and helped build her career. He's also a gay man. So they enter into what was historically known in Hollywood as a lavender marriage.
A lavender marriage. It's such a poetic term for something so rooted in sheer survival.
It is. It's a marriage of convenience specifically designed to provide a bulletproof heterosexual cover for both of them.
A mutual shield.
Harry is secretly with his partner, an actor named John Braverman. Evelyn is secretly with Celia St. James. To the outside world, the press, and the studio bosses, they are two powerful, straight Hollywood couples.
They go on double dates, they get photographed by the paparazzi.
But behind closed doors, they are a queer, chosen family. They even buy houses next to each other and knock down the connecting walls. Evelyn and Harry even raise a daughter together, Connor.
They build their own utopia hidden inside the dystopia of Hollywood.
But the walls of that utopia are so incredibly fragile. And the stakes are literally life and death.
Yeah, and the academic papers point out a very telling, devastating moment in the text regarding the Stonewall riots in 1969.
That's a huge turning point.
When the riots happened in New York, sparking the modern gay rights liberation movement, Evelyn and her chosen family are watching it on television.
Safe in their fortress.
Right. And they choose quiet, anonymous philanthropy over public protest. They secretly fund research in LGBTQ+ organizations, but they stay entirely in the closet.
Because the fear is just too immense.
The fear of being outed, of losing the empire they sacrificed everything to build, is so immense that they cannot join the revolution happening right outside their doors.
Which perfectly and tragically illustrates the terrible cost of the celebritized identity we talked about earlier. Evelyn has built an empire, yes, but she is trapped inside it.
A gilded cage.
As the academic critiques note, her life reflects broader themes of the struggle for authenticity within violently oppressive structures. She genuinely wants to be a champion for her community. She wants to march in the streets, but the hyper-real persona she created to survive now holds her hostage.
She cannot dismantle the master's house because she is locked inside the penthouse.
Wow, that's a powerful way to frame it.
It just brings up such a painful, irreconcilable tension between Evelyn's pragmatic ambition and Celia's desperate desire for authenticity. I kept thinking about this while reading the analysis.
What were you thinking?
Well, if you spend your entire life building a massive, impenetrable fortress to protect the person you love, but that fortress is constructed entirely out of lies, fake marriages, staged scandals, and constant paranoia, does it eventually just become a prison?
That is the defining tragedy of Evelyn Hugo. The literary sources emphasize that Celia constantly struggles with Evelyn's bisexuality and the ruthless lengths Evelyn will go to in order to protect their careers.
They clash constantly over it.
Because Evelyn's pragmatic, often cynical approach to survival clashes repeatedly with Celia's emotional need for validation, openness, and romantic honesty.
Right.
But Evelyn's absolute fierce loyalty to her chosen family, to Harry, to Celia, and to their daughter Connor, is the undeniable driving force of her life. She operates like a mob boss protecting her crew.
And it is this desperate, primal need to protect them that ultimately leads to her darkest, most morally complex decision in the entire narrative.
Yes.
And this is the moment in the deep dive where everything connects, the moment the floor drops out. Because this is the shocking twist that ties the legendary, untouchable Evelyn Hugo directly to the struggling, unknown journalist sitting across from her, Monique Grant.
The textual analysis details a pivotal, tragic night late in Evelyn's life. Harry Cameron, Evelyn's closest friend, her platonic husband, her soulmate in many ways, is driving drunk.
A terrible mistake.
He has struggled with alcoholism, and on this night, he makes a fatal error. In the passenger seat is his secret lover. They get into a horrific, devastating car crash.
Evelyn gets the call and discovers the wreck before the police or the press arrive. And in that moment, surrounded by twisted metal, she makes a split-second, truly unthinkable choice.
She sees that Harry is barely alive, but he was clearly driving.
And the man in the passenger seat is dead. To protect Harry from waking up and going to prison for vehicular manslaughter, to protect the legacy they spent decades building, Evelyn physically pulls the dead body of his lover out of the passenger seat and drags him into the driver's seat.
It's just horrific to picture.
She physically moves Harry to the passenger side. She frames the dead man for the crash, saving Harry's reputation and his freedom.
And the devastating revelation, the puzzle piece that makes the entire novel click into place,
Yeah.
is the identity of the dead man. The passenger, Harry's secret lover, was James Grant.
Monique's father.
Yes, Monique's father.
I just want to pause and let that sink in for a second. Evelyn Hugo chose Monique to write this insanely lucrative biography, not out of the goodness of her heart, not because she saw some hidden journalistic genius in Monique, but as a twisted, agonizing act of confession and restitution.
It's her penance.
She is giving Monique the financial windfall of her life story, millions of dollars, because she framed Monique's father for a fatal drunk driving accident decades ago.
And she's holding the evidence.
Yeah. Evelyn even provides Monique with a blood-stained letter from the night of the crash, a letter proving that James Grant deeply loved his family, Monique and her mother, even though he was struggling with his sexuality and his relationship with Harry.
This revelation is where the academic sources focus heavily on the theme of ambition versus morality.
Right. How do we evaluate her now?
How do we, as readers, judge a character like Evelyn after this? The literature argues that Evelyn is purposefully written to be neither a saint nor a villain. She operates on a very primal, almost animalistic morality. You protect your own tribe at all costs, regardless of who else gets hurt.
In her mind, Harry was her family and James Grant was collateral damage.
Exactly.
But I have to push back on Evelyn here and honestly on the scholars giving her a pass. Because what does this all mean for her soul?
It's a dark mark.
She absolutely destroys the legacy of an innocent man. She lets Monique grow up for decades believing her father was a reckless, selfish drunk who abandoned his family. She ruins another family to save her friend.
It's ruthless.
It's exactly like burning down your neighbor's house just to keep your own family warm. Does the novel actually allow for Evelyn's redemption after that? Or does it leave the judgment entirely up to us, and more importantly, to Monique?
That is a brutal analogy,
Huh.
but it is entirely accurate to the emotional violence of her choice. And the beauty of the novel, according to the critiques, is that it absolutely refuses to give simple, comforting answer.
It makes you sit in the discomfort.
It doesn't let Evelyn off the hook, but it also doesn't condemn her to pure villainy. It leaves the judgment suspended in that deeply uncomfortable moral gray area.
Yeah.
The sources highlight the immense psychological weight Evelyn has carried for decades. Her life proves that the ultimate cost of her unprecedented success, her survival tactics, was the slow, agonizing erosion of her moral integrity.
She gained the world, she kept her chosen family safe for a little while, but she had to carry the guilt of James Grant's framing until her dying breath.
And Monique is suddenly forced to absorb all of this in real time.
Right. This woman she has spent days admiring, learning from, feeling empowered by, is the literal architect of her family's greatest trauma. It's mind-bending.
How Monique processes this leads us right into the final act and the ultimate transformation of both women.
Exactly. Let's look closely at Monique's character growth because she is really the audience surrogate here.
The literary sources note that listening to Evelyn recount her ruthless survival tactics fundamentally, irrevocably changes Monique.
She stops waiting for permission.
She realizes that the world is not going to politely hand her what she deserves. She has to take it. She finalizes her divorce with David, realizing the marriage has been dead for a long time, and she was just clinging to the safety of it.
And she confronts her boss.
She goes to her intimidating boss, Frankie, and negotiates fiercely, demanding the cover photo and securing her position. Monique realizes she needs to, in her own newly coined phrase, Evelyn Hugo. Evelyn Hugo.
I absolutely love that phrase, Evelyn Hugoing someone.
It's so good.
It means taking absolute, unapologetic control, pushing boundaries, and refusing to feel bad about demanding your worth. Monique uses Evelyn's own playbook against her. She dictates the exact terms of how the biography will be published.
She's in the driver's seat now.
And her emotional state is so complex. She violently hates Evelyn for what she did to her father. The fury is volcanic. She wants to destroy her. But at the exact same time, she deeply respects Evelyn's grit.
It's a masterclass in holding two completely contradictory truths in your head at once.
You can abhor someone's actions, you can recognize their profound moral failure, and still be profoundly changed and empowered by their strength.
It's a very mature realization for Monique. And while Monique is finally stepping into her power and claiming her life, Evelyn is meticulously preparing for her final exit.
The ultimate control.
The sources reveal that Evelyn is dying of breast cancer.
Hmm.
And despite the fame, the money, the legacy, she is completely alone.
She has outlived everyone she truly loved.
Celia passed away years earlier from emphysema. Harry died shortly after the car crash. And most devastatingly, her daughter Connor passed away from breast cancer.
With her chosen family gone, the fame and the fortune mean absolutely nothing. The fortress is empty.
Which brings us back to the gowns. The charity auction of her famous dresses that started this whole story in the first chapter.
Yes, the symbolism of the gowns is critical to the thematic resolution of the novel.
How did the academic analyses treat the auction?
They point out that these dresses physically represent the false selves, the simulacra she presented to the world. There's the emerald green gown she wore during the years she was hiding Dawn Adler's physical abuse behind a brilliant smile. There's the navy blue silk gown she wore when she secretly signaled her love to Celia from the Oscar stage. By auctioning them off, she isn't just raising money for breast cancer research, she is systematically, publicly shedding the celebritized identity.
She is rejecting the hyper-real image that the public worshipped for half a century.
She is taking back her narrative one last time. Evelyn makes the decision to end her own life, to die with dignity on her own terms, before the cancer takes her autonomy away.
She refuses to let a disease dictate her final act.
And the conclusion of the book, the excerpt that Monique eventually publishes in Vivant, is Evelyn's ultimate defiant reclamation of her identity. Evelyn explicitly states, quote, "Evelyn Hugo never existed. She was a person I made up for them, so that they would love me."
That is the crux of the postmodern critique within the novel. It is the realization that the idolized image is entirely hollow.
The true triumph.
The true triumph, as noted by the literary sources, is not that she was a movie star. The triumph is that her posthumous biography will finally record historical truth. It will definitively, undeniably state that Evelyn Hugo was a bisexual woman who fiercely, madly loved a woman named Celia St. James.
That is the legacy she chooses to leave. Not the 7 husbands, but the one true wife.
It is such a profound, sweeping journey.
It really is. We've gone from the poverty and violence of Hell's Kitchen to the glittering, deeply oppressive heights of old Hollywood to the quiet, devastating unmasking in an Upper East Side apartment.
We've seen how The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo uses the glamorous facade of celebrity culture to explore deep sociological truths about gender, power, queer identity, and the incredibly heavy toll of living a manufactured life.
It challenges us to look closely at the mechanisms of fame. It asks us to recognize the sacrifices required to navigate a society that demands rigid conformity.
And ultimately, it asks us to consider the vast difference between the image we project to survive and the reality we actually live.
And that is exactly where we want to leave you today, because while you listening might not have paparazzi chasing you down the street or studio executives controlling your contracts and dictating your hair color, every single one of us curates a public image.
Especially today.
Especially today in the age of social media, where we constantly filter, edit, and crop our lives for public consumption. We are all, in small ways, building our own simulacra.
Evelyn Hugo spent decades building a legendary, bulletproof persona, only to realize at the very end of her life that her greatest achievement, her only real source of joy, was the quiet, hidden love she shared entirely behind closed doors.
It really comes down to the pursuit of applause versus the pursuit of authenticity.
Exactly.
So in our own lives, as we carefully curate our images, our feeds, our professional personas for the world to see, what parts of our authentic selves are we quietly sacrificing for the applause of strangers?
It's a question we all need to ask ourselves.
And when the show is finally over,